You've probably told yourself it's just bad luck, that you keep meeting the wrong people, that one day the right one will finally show up and stay. But look at the pattern, not the person, the pattern. Because there's something your brain has been doing quietly for years that has nothing to do with luck. You're not just drawn to emotionally unavailable people, you're wired for them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why, and why walking away has always felt so much harder than it should.
Sign 1. Calm feels like a warning sign. Think about the last time someone was genuinely good to you. Consistent, present, not playing games. They texted back. They showed up. They made it easy. And something about it felt off. Not wrong exactly, just flat, like the air had gone out of the room. You told yourself maybe there was no spark, maybe the chemistry wasn't there, maybe they were too available, too eager, too much of everything you said you wanted. So you pulled back, or you got bored, or you found a reason it wouldn't work. The nervous system doesn't recognize love by how good it feels. It recognizes love by how familiar it feels. And if the love you learned first came with tension, distance, and uncertainty, your brain quietly filed that under the category of real. Consistency doesn't produce the same rush. It doesn't make your heart race the way a hot and cold dynamic does, so it gets mistaken for something less, something ordinary. The craving isn't for a specific person, it's for a specific feeling, and that feeling has a name. It's called anxiety. You've just been calling it chemistry for a very long time. Sign 2. You mistake the chase for connection. There's a reason slot machines are more addictive than any game with a guaranteed reward. Random, unpredictable, sometimes nothing, sometimes everything. The brain doesn't just tolerate that unpredictability, it craves it, because every almost connection, every crumb of warmth after a cold spell, triggers a dopamine release that a steady, reliable relationship simply can't match. Emotionally unavailable people create this cycle without even trying. One week they're warm, open, pulling you close. The next they're distant, vague, hard to reach. And somewhere in that gap between the good moments and the silence, you become obsessed, not with them exactly, but with getting back to how it felt when they let you in. You replay conversations, you analyze the shift, you try harder, soften your edges, make yourself easier to love. And in those rare moments when they come back, when the warmth returns, it feels like the most intense relief you've ever felt. That relief isn't love. It's your nervous system coming down from a state of threat. The chase feels like passion. The anxiety feels like depth. But what's actually happening is that your brain has been conditioned, the same way it gets conditioned to any cycle of reward and withdrawal, to need the hit. Sign 3. You believe your love can change them. This is the one that keeps people stuck the longest. There's a quiet belief underneath the whole pattern, one most people would never say out loud because it sounds too vulnerable, that if you love them the right way, long enough, patiently enough, without needing too much, they'll finally open. They'll finally choose you. They'll finally become the person you saw at the beginning, or the person you know they could be. It's not naivety, it's repetition compulsion. Psychology describes it as the unconscious drive to recreate familiar emotional dynamics from childhood, not to suffer again, but to finally get a different ending. If the people who were supposed to love you first were inconsistent, distant, hard to reach, you learned that love was something you earned through patience and endurance. So when you meet someone unavailable, something deep in the nervous system recognizes the script, and it says, "This time I can do it. This time I'll be enough. This time I'll get them to stay." But you're not trying to win this person. You're trying to rewrite something that happened long before they arrived. And no amount of love, patience, or self-erasure changes someone who hasn't chosen to change themselves. You can't heal someone else's wound by bleeding from your own. Sign 4. You lose yourself without noticing. It doesn't happen all at once. First, it's small things. You stop mentioning your needs because it always seems to complicate things. You adjust your schedule, your energy, your tone, calibrating constantly to whatever mood they're in. You edit your texts before sending to make sure nothing sounds too needy, too intense, too much. Then the hobbies slow down, the friendships thin out. You spend more and more mental space on the relationship, analyzing it, managing it, trying to stabilize something that was never stable to begin with. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you stop being fully present in your own life. Not because you chose to disappear, but because the relationship became a full-time occupation, and you were doing most of the work alone. The loneliest part of being in something like this isn't the distance from them. It's the distance from yourself. The version of you that existed before you started shrinking. The one with opinions, plans, energy for other things, gets quieter and quieter until you can barely hear them. People who've been through this often describe the same realization. They gave everything and received almost nothing, and yet letting go feels like losing more. That's not love holding you there. That's investment. The part of the brain that refuses to walk away from something it's already poured so much of itself into. Sign 5. The pattern keeps finding you. They don't all look the same. That's the part that confuses people the most. One was emotionally cold. The next was warm but completely unreliable. One was physically present but impossible to reach. Another was intense at the beginning and then gradually, quietly disappeared. Different people, different stories, same feeling at the end. The pattern isn't in them, it's in what feels like home to you. When emotional inconsistency was the environment you learned to navigate first, your nervous system developed a very specific template for what connection looks like. And it keeps applying that template, unconsciously, automatically, to every new relationship. It's not a flaw, it's how the nervous system works. It defaults to the known because the known feels survivable. Someone who's actually consistent, who doesn't leave you guessing, can feel more threatening than familiar dysfunction, because at least with dysfunction, you know what to expect. The pattern repeats not because you're broken or have poor judgment. It repeats because the emotional blueprint you developed early is still running in the background, directing you toward what it recognizes as love. Seeing that clearly, not as a personal failure, but as a learned response, is the first real moment of choice.
Sign 6. Leaving feels like withdrawal. You know it's not healthy. You've known it for a while. You've said it to friends. Maybe you've written it down. Maybe you've ended it more than once, genuinely meant it, and then found yourself back again within days or weeks, not because things changed, but because the absence felt unbearable in a way that was hard to explain. The emptiness that follows isn't ordinary heartbreak. It moves through the body differently, restless, physical, an anxious pull that doesn't quiet down the way grief usually does. That's because what's ending isn't just a relationship. It's a biochemical cycle the brain has become dependent on. The highs of the good moments, the hypervigilance of the uncertain ones, the relief of the returns. All of it together created a loop that the brain now registers as normal. Removing it triggers something that looks and feels like withdrawal. That's why willpower alone rarely works. The logical part of you, the part that knows they're unavailable, that knows this isn't working, that has made this decision a dozen times, keeps getting overruled by something deeper. A pattern learned by the nervous system can be unlearned by the nervous system, but it takes more than a decision. It takes time, the right support, and a slow process of teaching your brain that safety doesn't have to feel like danger to be real. Therapy, particularly approaches that work directly with emotional memory, have shown real results with this cycle, not by explaining the pattern to you, but by changing how your body experiences it. You were never addicted to them. You were addicted to the feeling of almost being chosen. And once you understand that, not just in your head, but in your body, the grip starts to loosen. Consistent love doesn't feel electric at first for people wired this way. It feels quiet, steady, almost too simple. But quiet and steady is what safe actually feels like. You just haven't had enough of it yet to recognize it.